Hey there, my name is Porsha Lauri. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's still pretty early in the year, and I've been trying to do my best to stick to at least some of my resolutions. Most of which I haven't, but there is one New Year's resolution I made that I've been on top of, and that has been reading. I realized that a good majority of the books I read as a kid in junior high, high school, whatever, were then later turned into movies and or TV shows. Or sometimes vice versa. I would watch something, realize it was a book, and then I would go and read it. And so that got me thinking about the topic of adaptions and screen adaptions. So I thought today I would talk to you about some of my favorite books turned movies or TV shows and kind of my thoughts on them. I usually try to pre-plan my videos with a little bit of research and background. Today is going to be a little less planned and it's a lot more opinion based. So if this topic interests you, do me a solid and drop a like on this video. I've had a lot of new subscribers pop up recently. Thank you to all of you who have subscribed. I really appreciate it, but I'd love to hear more of your opinions in my comments down below. As always, if you like my opinions on all things pop culture, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and if you hit the bell next to it, you'll be notified every time I upload. So the first book when I'm thinking about screen adaptions is A Walk to Remember. Is a Nicholas Sparks book, which Nicholas Sparks, I pretty much fueled all my romantic fantasies from like junior high all the way through my 20s. The Notebook is him, The Vow, Dear John, he knows his romance. I didn't plan for this, but I actually have it, and if you look at it, it's like super worn. I have read and reread this at least 5 to 10 times. I actually hate that it's the movie film cover. Whenever I buy books now, I look for the actual original cover and not these crappy ones. The book is based in the 1950s. Is kind of an ode to Nicholas Sparks' sister, who I believe passed away.
So I wrote A Walk to Remember, and it was largely inspired by my sister. My sister is Jamie Sullivan, if you want to know who she is. I mean, like Jamie Sullivan, my sister wore this ugly brown cardigan to school every day. Like Jamie Sullivan, she befriended every animal in the neighborhood and helped get it better. Like Jamie Sullivan, she carried a Bible to school.
I would say the biggest difference between the book and the movie is that the book is very based in religion, and the movie is more about him having faith in himself, I think, more so than the Christianity aspect of it. The thing that I like about it is that the central idea of love is all there. How Landon is selfish and very concerned about how other people look at him, his status. Those things are both in both versions of the book. The book version is just, it's based in the 1950s. So of course, a lot of the things that we see going on in the movie version wouldn't have existed then. In the movie, remember, there's that scene where all the cool kids don't include Landon in this, but they make this poster, and it's Mandy Moore's face on this body. Things like that obviously wouldn't exist in the 50s version. Little known fact, the original version of that movie, she didn't have any clothes on, but in the movie version, she's wearing a bikini. They added the clothes to make the movie more accessible by giving it a PG-13 rating. I think this is a very very good adaptation. They took the general baseline story of it and then applied it in a modern world so that kids could go out and watch this movie and be like, oh, that could happen to me. Of all the movies and books I'm going to talk about today, I would highly recommend this book and the movie. All right, and the next topic we're going to get into is Gossip Girl. Extremely two different things. So Gossip Girl is a book series that came out sometime in the early 2000s. And then the TV show version came out in, I believe, 2007, 2008. It came out right around my junior or senior year of high school. So I decided to take a look at it. And I read the first book and I really wasn't that impressed. I actually thought it was pretty boring, and I thought the characters were so self-involved that it didn't really feel like I was rooting for anyone. I was just kind of reading a play-by-play of just things happening at this school. So I never picked up the rest of the series. I just read the first one and kind of just left it at that. Cut to the TV show coming out, and this is one of the few times where I can personally say I think the TV show is way better than the book. From what I've read online, because I did do a little bit of research on this one since I wasn't familiar with the entire series. From what I understand, the first season or the first few episodes are really centralized with the book, and I do remember the first episode is pretty much the first book. But after that, they basically stray so far away from the book that it's now its own entity.
Now that Gossip Girl has been on TV for 5 years, it's really difficult for me to even see the characters just as like people on a page. I immediately envision Blake Lively as Serena and Leighton Meester as Blair, and they've become kind of interwoven. But at the same time, I know that the Chuck in the books is a very different guy than the really nice guy played by Ed Westwick in the television show, and I have to stick with what I created. I think that's also important for readers to remember when they're reading the books that they are different characters.
What I think works about the TV show, it's hard to really put into play what you read in a book is inside the mind of whoever is, the protagonist of the story. And so you only really get their perspective, and so you're limited on what you can see. When you look at the TV show really focuses on every single character, and they have their own storylines going. I recently started rewatching it just because I was watching You, and so I think everyone started to miss Dan Humphrey a lot. And that's like what I realized about it, and probably why I prefer the TV show so much more, is that the books kind of do that, but the TV show does it better. All the drama just kept you energized and ready for like the next thing to happen. And the book, it's hard because it's so drawn out. Also, the TV show heightens everything up, big over-the-top thing, and that's what was really selling at the time. So my definitive answer on that one would be that the TV show is better. Next up, The Hunger Games. So this is actually a movie or a book that I read like backwards from the movie. I remember seeing this book on like shelves and stuff, but I just didn't bother to pick it up. I'm not an action book reader. I'm also not really into like sci-fi or fantasy. Like sometimes I am. That's not really my thing. Example, I'm not talking about Harry Potter today because I've never read all of the books and or seen all the movies. I know. So we went to the movies and I saw this movie and I got obsessed on read the books because the books are so much better. And I did. And they are.
One of the things that concerns me, and it goes back to that moment of inspiration where I'm clicking between the reality television programming and the Iraq War, is we see so many images coming at us on television, over the internet, on your BlackBerry, whatever. You see so many images that, do they all begin to have a sameness to them? Are you really distinguishing between the different things that you see on different channels? Are you really distinguishing if you're flipping through quickly?
I can't think of anything that I really don't like about the book. It was like an action-packed book that actually kept me interested. I always thought reading about action wouldn't be nearly as fun as watching the action take place, but this book is just very, very gripping, especially once they actually get to the games. You could ask anyone, it's far more violent and brutal in the book than it is in the movie, and I think that that's actually good the way it is. You can make a distance and it doesn't feel real, but I think to see some of like the graphic brutality happening in the book on screen, that would have been like too much. So I would say like the book is better, but the movie did the best that they could to try to reach the kids that were reading these books. It's about kids killing other kids, but this book it's considered young adult. It's a YA book, so it's meant for kids to read. And I just think like the movie did a very good job of making it not so traumatizing for young eyes. As an adult watching it, yeah, I wish they really went there. I wish they really adapted it, but I can understand why they didn't. They wanted to reach the audience that was reading the books at the time, and that makes sense. The last thing is that there's just a few like core things to the story that they don't explain in the movies. And I remember during the first movie, I had to keep asking my friends certain things. Like they do this as like a sign of respect or like a sign of like loyalty. I don't know exactly the words. I'll try to put it on the screen or something. But they don't explain to you what that means in the movie. Also, the Mockingjay, they don't go into the real story of how she got that pin and what it means. You just kind of figure that crap out along the way. So those are things that I wish like the movie had paid more attention to because they're so intrinsic within the storyline. Those pieces are very important to the puzzle that you get to, when she actually finally becomes the Mockingjay. So if I was going to suggest something, I would suggest reading The Hunger Games first and then watching the movies. Okay, so I wasn't gonna talk about this because, like, why? Why would I talk about this? 50 Shades of Grey. I feel like I can't talk about book turn movie without also talking about this. So to be honest, neither is good. However, I kept reading them. Like, I read all 3 of the books, and I saw the first 2 movies. I didn't see the last movie. It looked really dumb, and I just, like, couldn't get into it. Like, how were they gonna make this a movie in theaters? Like, let's be real, like, the goods are in the book. My problem with the book is that it's so poorly written. It's got grammatical errors. It's just not that great. And if you know, you know, this is based on Twilight fan fiction. So the main character of Anastasia, she is essentially Bella, which means that she doesn't have a personality. Neither character, neither Christian nor Anastasia, really have any motivation throughout the book. She never talks about what her dreams are or what she wants to accomplish with her English degree. Like, my assumption is she wants to write books or something, but she never has a motivation in the book series or the movie. Like, there's no point. Her whole life is about this man that she meets in the first chapter of the first book, which again makes it's like, obviously this was fan fiction because that's kind of how most fan fiction is written. It's just like, get to the point. There's character development. It's still like very minimal. And then to look at the movies, I just don't feel any genuine attraction between the main characters, which is like the whole point. I can't even tell you the names of both of the actors that play it. I researched these movies, I watched interviews, I watched them, everything except for the last one, and I still couldn't really tell you who was in it because they just aren't remarkable movies. My suggestion is, like, you can probably find better fan fiction on the internet. I think that this really became so popular just because people were talking about it, and it was based on Twilight, and it was riding that Twilight wave, and those movies got to ride the Twilight wave. I can't in good faith suggest you this book or that movie. All right, we finally reached the end. This is the final book I'm going to be talking about, and you know what it is. It's Twilight. Hello. I don't know where my copy is of the original Twilight, but this is my favorite book in the series, so that's why I'm holding it up. But Twilight, this was such a staple of my teenagedom. I feel like I have a very special relationship with this movie and the book series. The first time I heard about Twilight was actually in junior high. So remember when I said I don't like sci-fi? This is why I mean, I like some sci-fi because I'm super into werewolves, vampires, all that kind of stuff. Grew up watching Buffy, loved Charmed. At that point, ever been exposed to it in that kind of scenario, like on screen. But I remember hearing that Kristen Stewart was going to be playing Bella in the Twilight adaptation. I've been following Kristen Stewart like basically her whole career. Before Twilight came out, she was in a movie called Speak. And that movie was based, is actually an adaptation from my very favorite book, Speak by Lauri Anderson. It's just like a made-for-TV Lifetime movie, but that book was so important to me, and then the movie was good too, like, you know, as good as like a Lifetime movie could be. And so because of that, and I found out she was going to be in Twilight, I was like, okay, like I definitely for sure want to see this movie, but I know that they're books, so I think I'm going to read all the books before the movie comes out. And all 4 books before any of the movies came out. It's really hard to say if it's a good adaptation, but there's very little that they left out that was like important. Of course, as an adult now, looking back at the whole Twilight series, I get where everyone was coming from, because there's a lot of controversial stuff in that. I'm not going to talk about that because I don't care. But I think the baseline story of it, they did a great job of keeping it consistent.
The best part, though, is the quiet part where you're actually creating it. You know, all the rest of it's sort of this outside of you thing, but writing the words down is the most fun. The movies, in some way, have made my life easier. I was kind of the focus of some of it, and it was really uncomfortable. And then the movies came out, and all of the attention shifted to Rob and Kristen Taylor. It was like, yes! I feel really bad, though. They've had so much, like, you know, press this I do feel bad about for them. And then the positive things, I feel like they really have brought on themselves through what they've done. And I'm excited for all the things that they're going to do in the future.
I touched on it when I was talking about 50 Shades of Grey, but it's the same thing. Anastasia, Bella, they both don't really have personality. They have thoughts and opinions, but they're really like wishy-washy about it. And something I've read is that Bella was intentionally meant to not have a personality. Her whole purpose is just to be with one of these dudes. And so as a reader, didn't realize that at the time, but that's what I did. Bella was me. I was Bella. And it was really easy to put myself into the story, like make my own opinions about her relationships because she was such a blank canvas. Kind of works for Twilight. I think it just, like, the dynamic between her and Edward is so, like, genuine. It kind of feels like it's meant to be like that because he's kind of like that too. Bella doesn't have any motivation, and we've already established that, but all the other characters do, so it makes for a more well-rounded story. I would say every movie is very different. Every movie is directed by a different director, and so it shows. If you watch them 1 through, 4, they're all very, very different. Personal favorites, Eclipse, the book, and the movie were my personal favorites. I think Breaking Dawn is obnoxious because it was split into 2 parts and it's really long and kind of ridiculous. And it's not a great wrap-up because they spent so much time making this like fake fight altercation to like mess with the readers that it kind of takes away from like the general storyline of the real movie. By the way, that scene never happens in the book. It's only a movie thing, which makes sense because the movie would be boring if they didn't add that. But then they also didn't have to split it into 2 separate movies and just could have made it 1. Anyway, does anybody else think Jacob sucks? Like, when they casted Taylor Lautner, I kind of came around a little bit because, you know, he cute. But I don't like that character. He was far too juvenile for Bella at any point in time. And then the fact that he ends up with her daughter, that's a whole different thing. All right, well, that's all I have for you today. I actually have a really big video I'm working on that's going to be a bigger comparison that involves more research. But if you like this format, if you like me kind of free-forming my opinion on different things, different topics, let me know in those comments below. Remember, as always, if you like this video, do me a solid and drop a like on it, and then run over to that subscribe button and hit the bell next to it so you can be notified every time I upload. Until next time, I'll catch you guys later. Bye!